Hi everyone, welcome to my studio. Today I'm going to start off by painting the background to a quick and easy painting of a spring robin who is nesting in the cherry blossom in the garden. And so I've got my sheet of paper here, which is a stretched sheet of 90-pound watercolour paper, and I've just wet the whole thing, the centre of the whole thing, with a big brush, a big mop brush. And now I'm just dropping in some cobalt blue diluted, and I'm putting it in a kind of patchy kind of way, not smoothing it out at all, just dropping it in dribs and drabs, so that it's going to form a kind of mottled sort of background, which is going to give the impression of the sky. And on top of that, when that's finally dry and finished, we're going to paint the robin. So having done that stage, I'm now going to sprinkle on some fine table salt. This is not the chunky kind, this is just fine salt that you use, you know, Saxo salt in England, and just sprinkling that on. When it hits the paper, you can see straight away it starts to suck up the water, and that's what gives the interesting texture in the paint. But you mustn't play with it, so you just drop that on and scatter it around wherever you've put the paint most intensely perhaps, and then you lay that aside and let it dry. Okay, so here's the background after having removed the salt, and we have some really nice textures going on here, and it's going to make a perfect background for a bird. So I'm going to paint a robin on here, and one good way of figuring out where you're going to paint your subject on a background like this is to draw an outline of the thing you want to paint on a piece of tracing paper. This is proper tracing paper, and then you can position it wherever and see whether in fact it's going to look the way you want it to look. So I just sketched the outline of a robin there, and I think it probably would work quite well positioned there. We'll be able to get some nice reds here where the paint is less strong in the background, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to scribble over the back of that with a graphite pencil, and then I'll trace it onto the background. Or I could just draw it in position. Now I know where it is going to go, I could just draw it in position. So one or the other, and I'll go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in a second. So I've got 4 colours here that I'm going to use for this bird. Quinacridone Gold, Cobalt Blue, black for the eye, and burnt umber, and possibly burnt sienna. I'm not quite sure about that yet, whether I'll be using that, but I'll probably be using burnt umber instead. A little bit of burnt sienna possibly on the branch here underneath, and I've put a few flowers and leaves in there, which we'll do at the end. So I've left the discussion of the red for the robin's breast to last, because it's a little bit more complicated. Unless you happen to have a red which you feel is the exact right colour for the variegated red of the breast of the robin, you're probably going to want to mix more than one colour together. Now I've got an Old Holland bright red here, which is more like, you might call it an orange, and I'm wondering whether I would be happier if I mixed that with something else to get a stronger reddish colour for the robin. I think when you look at a robin, you would notice that they are on the orange side, and I actually bought that colour because I thought it would be possibly quite good for this particular bird. But then when I got it, I realised it was a little bit too orange. So I'm mixing it with rose at the moment. That's quinacridone rose there, and I'm not terribly happy with that either, so I'm going to try it with Alizarin crimson, and I'm hoping that that's going to be, that's a much richer red, isn't it? It's completely different from just alizarin on its own, which is very bluish, and obviously just orange, this colour on its own. But when you mix the two together, you get quite a nice rich red. So if you wanted to emphasize the redness of the bird's breast, then I would suggest a mixture of, this would be cadmium orange in the traditional colours, and alizarin crimson, the two traditional colours that most people have in their sets of paints. So that's what I'm going to do, alizarin crimson and cadmium red light. Okay, so here we have the drawing of the bird. I'm using a number 7 round brush here, and the first thing I'm going to do is paint the eye. I was going to do this yesterday and I'd wetted all my paints and everything, and then I don't know what happened. Something happened, the dog barked and everything went crazy. So I stopped, but because I'd just dampened them down last night, they're still wet. So I'll pick up a little bit of black and I'm just going to indicate the eye, leaving a little bit of white for the light in the eye. And then I'm going to start with a bit of burnt sienna across the top. Going close to but not up to the eye. And then robins have a little bit of blue there, and then they tend to have a darker brown. This is just the first layer. We'll come back in with some more paint after we've done this first pass. And then we want our mixture of oranges and red, so we'll just drop that in there. Blend the blue a bit, and then just allow those colours to mingle a little bit down below there. And then we can put in his legs and feet, like that. And then I like to drop in some Quinacridone Gold, just to make the whole thing a little bit warmer and allow it to blend, not to mess with it too much. And then I need some darker, I might add a bit of black to that brown for this bit here, tail, wing. And I'm going to leave that like that and let that blend and make any adjustments afterwards. If I'm not happy with it, then I can always go into it with ink, for example. Now I'm just doing a branch here. Just grey that down with a little bit of blue. And then I think if we put in some pink flowers, I've got the flowers here. I'm not sure how this is going to work because we're on a blue background, but it might just give a nice soft muted effect, we'll see. Just roughly dropping in the flowers. And again, if we want to, we can always come back in with ink and sharpen things up a bit. Just painting the leaves now, and this opportunity to bring in some quite nice Quinacridone Gold and a little bit of darker green there. This paper is very absorbent, I've just discovered. That's not necessarily a problem, but sometimes when you start painting, if you're not sure how the paper is going to react, it can be a bit of a surprise, and you have to adjust your painting technique accordingly and go away from what you had originally intended. I'm just strengthening the pink in these flowers a little bit. And his beak is going to be a sort of greyish brown, so I'll just drop that in. Okay, so now we'll let that dry and see whether it needs sharpening up or whether that's going to be just fine the way it is. Okay, so it's perfectly dry now, and looking at this, I do feel that we need to darken the head area a little bit, so I'm going to just drop a little bit more colour in there. That's better. And I'm just going to also just darken slightly the underside of the beak, and maybe we just need a little bit of just a little bit more shadow there, the top of his legs. And maybe one or two little dots and dashes on his wing there. Perhaps maybe a little tiny detail on his feet. That's the back claw in there. And the question is whether or not to do any more to the leaves and the flowers. They don't have any centre veins at all, any of these, so maybe we should just drop in a little bit of colour there to give a little bit more. I'm still tossing up with the idea of using pen and ink, but I don't think I will. I think that might spoil the effect. I think it's quite nice and light the way it is. If we start to ink in the flowers, we will lose some of the freshness of it and spontaneity. So imagine this was a Christmas card, or well, not Christmas card. This is actually very much from now, because we've got loads and loads of robins around here. They're nesting, and obviously they're sitting on the branches with blossom and so on and so forth. So this is a spring robin. You could put some spatter in. I don't know, maybe I should add a few drops of blue spatter to the sky. What do you think? Because we've got such a textured background anyway, you certainly don't need that. It's not absolutely vital to provide interest like that. But let's say we wanted to do that, a little bit of, just a few. I always like a little bit of spatter. I think that, I don't know why, it does something to the eye. And I do feel that, I don't know, I keep thinking this needs just a little bit of something a little bit darker. Don't know. Okay, I'm going to call that done. Don't want to play with that anymore. We'll leave it like that and give it a go. It's easy. Oh, I'll tell you what. That's still lightening up. There we are. Don't forget to give us a like and leave a comment below. I love your comments, and I enjoy reading them and replying to them every morning before I start working in the studio. So I look forward to hearing from you all, and have a lovely day, and I'll see you again soon. So bye bye for now, everybody. Bye bye.